What does the American Dream mean today? A question that is often asked by many people during modern times. However, during hard times and in professional wrestling, the American Dream is always going to mean the patriarch of one of wrestling's finest families. A family that's the topic of this episode. Because today... This episode comes to you as the result of the polls over on Patreon. Brand new polls are up right now, so go ahead, sign up, and vote. And while I'm at it, I also want to give a big thank you to my Patreon supporters, such as Jeff Ang, Andy Safardi, and Zane BR. Thank you so much for the support. The American Dream, the son of a plumber, Dusty Rhodes, was born Virgil Riley Reynolds Jr. He was born in Austin, Texas, and graduated from Arlington Heights High School in Fort Worth. Rhodes was an avid baseball fan, playing for West Texas State University, which is now known as West Texas A&M. He also played football there as well. This led to him trying out for the NFL's Boston Patriots, who are now known as the New England Patriots, but he was cut. He then went to play for the Continental Football League and their team, the Hartford Charter Oaks, until they closed. But it was from there that things would change forever. Once there, he got his real-life friends Bobby Duncombe and the Funks to endorse him to a promoter, despite having no wrestling experience prior. But things worked out in the end, as he would go on to get training, particularly from that of Joe Blanchard. That's right, Tully's father. And speaking of names you know, how exactly did he get the name of Dusty Rhodes? Well, there are two conflicting stories about that. Some claim that his love of baseball was the culprit, as he was supposedly inspired by baseball player Jim Rhodes, whose nickname was Dusty. However, there is also another claim out there that he was first billed as Dusty Reynolds. That is, until he went back to Texas and World-Class Championship Wrestling, because it was allegedly there that Gary Hart suggested that he change his name to Lonesome Rhodes, a reference to the Andy Griffith character in the movie A Face in the Crowd. To which the American Dream replied, "Well, I don't plan on being lonesome, I think I'll stick with Dusty." Either way, no matter. Gary Hart was so impressed by Dusty that he went on to become his manager, pairing Rhodes up with Don Jardine, with the two forming a heel tag team. From there, Rhodes would go on to be part of other promotions and also become a part of the Texas Outlaws tag team with Dick Murdoch. He would also continue to work with Gary Hart and another tag partner, Pac Song, and it was thanks to the two of them that we would all get the Dusty that we know and love. Song and Hart turned on Dusty during a tag match in Florida, and as a result, Dusty turned a babyface, and finally, his natural charisma and star power were allowed to shine. This is where he began calling himself the American Dream, representing the everyman, because he believed that with hard work and dedication, he could triumph over adversity and achieve success. Which is a story that actually mirrored Dusty's real life. Just think about it. He was cut from the NFL, went to another organization which had to shut down, and then during his early years of professional wrestling, he had to sleep in his car. But despite not having a typical professional wrestler appearance, his dedication and his skills as a performer allowed him to become one of the greatest megastars in professional wrestling history. Now, outside the ring, Dusty had several children, including Cody, who we will be getting to later on, Kristen, who was a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader, as well as our next entry into the Rhodes family, Dustin Patrick Reynolds. The grandson of a plumber would begin working under the name Dustin Rhodes in 1988 for Championship Wrestling from Florida, a promotion where his dad would also work for too. From there, Dustin would hop around a lot during his early years, working for All Japan, the USWA, the CWA, and even both WCW and the WWF briefly before making more notable runs with each company. Dustin's first appearance on WWF TV was on an episode of Saturday Night's Main Event, where he was part of the catalyst for the feud between Dusty and Ted DiBiase. Then in 1991, Dustin would return to World Championship Wrestling, and he would wrestle as the natural Dustin Rhodes. His first major feud was with Larry Zbyszko before moving on to another rivalry with the York Foundation, a heel stable of business types led by Alexandra York, played by Dustin's eventual wife, Terry Boatwright. Afterwards, Dustin would win the WCW United States Championship by defeating Ricky Steamboat in the finals of a tournament for the vacant title. However, the natural second run in WCW would eventually come to an end when he was fired for bleeding in the awful King of the Road match with the Blacktop Bully, as that was against company policy at the time. But all was not lost, as from here he would re-debut in the WWF with the name and character that he's probably most known for, the character of Goldust. Now, the story behind his character, according to some sources, goes a little something like this. Dustin, after leaving WCW, was on the phone with Vince McMahon, who offered him the part playing an androgynous character. Dustin agreed, not knowing what the word androgynous meant, and when he decided to look it up afterwards, he was shocked to find out its true meaning. However, he decided to make the most of it, and since he was looking to step out of his father's shadow and make his own legacy, he did exactly that, working with Vince McMahon to craft the character that we would come to know today. And it definitely worked, with many fans originally not knowing who was under the gold paint, and in many ways the gimmick was ahead of its time, and some would even say it still might be even now, with the persona taking the concept of ring psychology to a whole new level. Now, going back to Dustin's former wife, Terry Boatwright, aka Terry Reynolds, she began as a makeup artist for CNN. However, on weekends, she would moonlight by doing makeup for Jim Crockett Promotions. Then, once the company was bought by Ted Turner, it was Ole Anderson that asked if she would be interested in becoming a manager, a role that she would continue with upon joining the WWF later on with Dustin. Oh, and speaking of Rhodes through marriage, someone that many people may not know was related to the family is Dusty's brother-in-law, Fred Ottman, also known as Tugboat, Typhoon, and yes, the Shockmaster. Additionally, Dusty was also married to the sister-in-law of Nasty Boy, Jerry Saggs. Oh, and kayfabe-wise, the character of Oksana married Goldust just to stay in the United States, but that was just a story. And of course, let's not forget about another Rhodes through marriage, Brandi Alexis Reed, also known as Brandi Rhodes. Brandi was a competitive ice skater for 17 years before shifting her focus to academia. She received a full scholarship to the University of Michigan, worked as a reporter, then moved to Florida to begin a modeling and acting career. And while she was doing that, she would also earn her master's in broadcast journalism. In 2011, Brandi got involved with pro wrestling, signing a developmental contract with WWE. Yup, I'm willing to bet that some of you forgot about this. She mostly worked in their developmental territory FCW, but she did also get to ring announce for NXT and SmackDown under the name Eden Styles. Now, during this time, she would only get to participate in one match, which was a battle royal for FCW. Following that, she would ask for her release from the company, which was granted. But not long after, she would return to WWE in 2013, and would continue her announcing duties, even getting to work WrestleMania 31. But alas, in 2016, her and her now husband would leave WWE. Now, who is that husband? Well, I think you already know. He's the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes. Interestingly enough, the American Nightmare moniker was actually first used by Dustin in WCW. Born Cody Garrett Reynolds, Cody would have a successful amateur wrestling career in high school, winning the Georgia State Tournament in both his junior and senior years. But instead of going the amateur route, he would decide to pursue a professional wrestling career instead. Now, before that, starting at age 12, Dusty would actually show Cody the ropes in a very baseline way. However, moving forward to being an adult, Cody would join Ohio Valley Wrestling, where he would credit trainers such as Al Snow, Danny Davis, and Randy Orton as being the ones who would help develop him even further. It was around this time that Cody would form a tag team with Shawn Spears, which eventually led to their storyline rivalry in AEW. But of course, for many mainstream audiences, most WWE fans would remember him for teaming with the likes of Hardcore Holly, Damien Sandow, the faction of Legacy consisting of Ted DiBiase Jr. and the aforementioned Randy Orton, as well as getting to partner up with his big brother Dustin, most notably in the team of Goldust and Stardust. But on top of that, let's not forget that Cody has also had an amazing singles career too, including his runs as the dashing Cody Rhodes as well as the undashing Cody Rhodes, and also winning the WWE Intercontinental Championship and bringing back the good design for that belt. To which I have to say, thanks for that, Cody. However, briefly going back to that Stardust gimmick, this would lead to the end of Cody's time in WWE as he pleaded to ditch the character, providing several suggestions to creative, but to no avail. Cody would request his release, and it would be granted. But this would work out for the best. All this would eventually lead to the show All In, and Cody winning the belt of his father, the 10 pounds of gold, the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. And from there, the formation of All Elite Wrestling. And the rest, as they say, is history. Well, there you go, the history behind one of wrestling's greatest families. But what are some of your thoughts about the Rhodes? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to like this video as well as subscribing right here to Dave Knows Wrestling. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, Dave knows.